1. Many eons ago, in the time before, when brick phones still roamed the earth, and home phones were still the norm of the vast majority for staying in contact with people, I worked in a call center for a project whose main purpose is to become your long-distance carrier. Yes, remember when long distance was a thing? I'm lucky enough to be on inbound. That is, I receive calls from people who see the 800 number in a commercial and call to see if we could get them a better deal. The number of calls we get fluctuates a lot depending on how many ads are running that day and the popularity of the shows that run them. And there would always be a number of calls where the caller would simply hang up as soon as you greeted. All the better. I don't really want to talk to them anyway, and this really helps one's average call handling time. For the purposes of this story, it should be understood that I am a man in possession of a nice baritone voice. This is actually important to the story. As this story is from the ancient past, the dialogue is more representative than actual, but as best as I remember it. At a certain point in time, I notice a considerable upswing in these hang-ups. At about the same time, the women on the team start muttering with each other, and the word toe sucker is first heard in the call center. Honestly, I don't really pay it much attention at first, but it continues to be a persistent word I hear with no real context to get why. A month or two later, I'm sitting next to a friend of the female persuasion, and it is a slow period between campaigns, so we are chatting more than usual between calls. I get a hang-up. About 20 seconds later, she gets a call, and as she gives her greeting, I see her face shrivel up in disgust, and she says, "Not again," as she disconnects the call. She looks at me and says, "The toe sucker is on the list tonight. It's going to be a long one." Finally, a chance to ask, "What is a toe sucker?" "Oh yeah, he likely just hangs up on you. This dude starts calling, and when we answer, he immediately asks in a creepy voice if he can suck our toes. Some of the girls talk to him, but we've been told not to encourage him. We should just hang up as soon as we know it's him on the line. So this guy calls you randomly and asks if he can suck on your toes?" "Oh yeah, but it ain't random. Once he starts up, he just calls back and back again. Watch." And as I watch, the call does in fact seem to be making the rounds of the team. One by one, our phone rings. When we answer, if it's a guy, the caller hangs up. If it's a lady, you can see their visible annoyance and a few expressions like "go away" and "pervert" as the female call takers rush to drop the call. Then I get another hang-up, and my coworker gets another confirmed call from the toe sucker. Wow, how often does this happen? Nearly all the time, but some days he doesn't call at all. We even had a whole week where we didn't hear from him, but then he strikes again. I watch the call make the cycle of our team again. I'm next, and I make a risky decision to pitch my voice a bit higher in a much more ambiguous range, and use a diminutive form of my name that could be used for either gender. It's a risk, because if it's a legitimate call, quality assurance might not appreciate me using my normal voice. "Thank you for calling Big Long Distance Company. This is OP. How may I help you?" It is the toe sucker. His voice is greasy and odd, and reminds me of Beavis from Beavis and Butthead. "Can I suck your toes? Tell me about your toes. I want to..." Yeah, I dropped the call. I can't believe this guy. I'm so sorry you have to deal with this kind of treatment from some dude. Yeah, it's why I actually quit last month. I'm tempted to join her. Can't they track it down and make him stop? They tried. I'm told the phone it keeps coming from is in the hallway of a psychiatric hospital next to the recreation room. They've identified the guy who sits there making the call for hours on end. He's not considered to be responsible for his actions. They can't, or won't, stop him, and they can't block the number because it's a public phone, so yeah, not much chance of it stopping. Our supervisor comes over to see if anyone wants to take a voluntary time off for the shift, and sends all the women on a double break. After another half hour of hang-ups, the calls stop. I guess he gets bored if he cannot reach any women. I'm glad. I can now focus on reading my book without the drip, drip, drip of hang-up calls. But don't worry. You'll call back again another day. 2. This is from a few years ago, but I like to think back on it fondly. I was working in a call center for a regional alarm company as an inbound-outbound alarm monitor. We get a burglary alarm around 7 p.m. on a Thursday. Tons of clients frequently set off alarms when arming at night. Per instructions, I call the store and get no answer, so I call the police to report the alarm. Again, per the client's written instructions. Just as I hang up with the police, another monitor gets a call back from a very angry woman who says she's a senior manager for all 4 stores. The other monitor verifies her identity, and the call gets transferred to me. She's upset that she set the alarm off and wants us to change the code to something easier. It's a 4-digit code, so whatever that means. I tell her I can't do that remotely. We can't. But would walk her through the process while she does it on her end. Should take 30 seconds, provided she only wants to change 1 code. Not good enough, she demands we do it for her. I try to explain that we can't, and even if we could, we shouldn't, for her business's own security. This causes her to flip out, yelling, cursing, personal insults about my career progression, the whole thing. There's nothing I can do here. She is asking for the impossible. I let her know that I can't do what she wants, but could try and set up a visit by a technician as soon as I can to help. But they're booked several weeks out for non-urgent matters. That's not good enough, so I offer an after-hours tech for a admittedly massive surcharge. Also not good enough. I tell her that the police are on their way and I'd really like to get off the phone to cancel them. Cue more cursing and yelling. Just then the police show up, and I advise her that I have to end the call as I have other more urgent things to deal with, and so does she. Cue her shouting as I move to hang up that we just cancel my company's service. My manager was many things, but she didn't really care for clients abusing staff. I was close to her office the next day when she called to follow up with the client, after listening to the call logs, and it went something like this. I listened to the entire call and my monitors did everything they were supposed to. They followed both our company's policies and your company's written instructions to the letter, and you still cursed and insulted them. They were nicer to you for far longer than I would have been, so you're lucky I didn't handle the original alarm. Per your request, I've canceled alarm coverage for all 4 stores effective immediately. Per our service agreement, your final invoice will be sent later today. Payment is due within 30 days or your account will be sent to collections. There will be no grace period. Because your alarm equipment is leased, I'll have someone from the service department call to set up times for our technicians to remove our devices next week. Apparently this is considered urgent. But until then, we've remotely deactivated your system, so you are now completely without alarm coverage. I suggest you start calling other alarm companies, but good luck finding someone to install 4 commercial systems in the next few hours before the weekend. No, you can't use our equipment. That's theft. No, you can't buy our equipment. It isn't for sale to you. Oh yes, you'll probably want to call your insurance company, as your lack of alarm coverage likely put you in breach of your insurance agreement. I hope your tantrum was worth it. The end. 3. So I'm a supervisor for a well-known timeshare company. I won't share who since I'm forbidden to do so and I don't want retribution. But if I said who it was, I promise you have heard of us, and more than likely stated that brand even if just as a hotel. So I took an escalated call today. Backstory is this guy owns several weeks and just redid some of his contracts, and was dealing with our transfer department back in February. The agent not only did the work on the new contracts, but also booked several reservations. Those transactions they normally refer the owner to call the reservations department for, where I am. After dealing with this guy, I have a feeling they strong-armed the rep into doing all of this for them. One of the transactions is they took one of the owned weeks and transferred the points to external exchange. If you are unfamiliar with timeshares, external exchange means that you can trade your timeshare through another company to book a timeshare elsewhere that someone else traded. This is common practice. The rep fully documented all of this. So he calls us today and complained that he never authorized the transaction to exchange, and he wanted to book his deeded week. Despite the clear notes on file, my boss wanted me to send an email to corporate and have them reserve all of this. Not an easy thing to do, and not anything that we can do during the course of a single phone call. There is no button I can push to make that happen. Fast forward, I tell this guy that I need to send an email, have this researched, and we can get back to him. That wasn't good enough. Despite me telling him there is no button I can push to make this happen, he demands I get it done right that instant. Even if I believed his story, there is no physical way I would have done this. He said he would sit on my phone over the weekend until it was resolved. 5 p.m. on a Friday? Yeah, no. I could not reason with him. I was the most senior person in the office at the time, so I couldn't even transfer him somewhere. My boss, who never takes calls, left early, and corporate doesn't exactly have a phone number, at least not one that's published. This guy wanted my personal email as well. Okay, so I have one, but security policy prohibits me from giving it, as it is for internal use only. He calls me a liar. Yeah, okay, you got me, but damn it, I do have rules to follow. He wants my personal extension. Okay, so we recently upgraded our phones. We no longer have numbered extensions. We give out our names so that we can be found if someone needs to transfer a call. They just pull us up and select our name. Nope, not good enough. I even offered our department email for customers that I personally respond to. I tell him this. Nope, not good enough. He wants me to ensure that not only I get the transaction reversed, that I book him this week. Again, because of what was already done, I can't do this easily. I must have told this man this 30 times. In the end, I told him that since I have advised him several times what we are doing, and he would not end the call, I would mute the line and put my headset down and finish the rest of my work. The man stayed on my line until the end of my shift, 90 minutes. I went on my break, came back, did more work, and then logged out. I ended up having to hang up on him just to log out. Dude, seriously, at some point, damn the job, I gotta get on with my life. 4. I had just started working at a call center. I had been there about 2 weeks. At the same time, I got surgery on my sinuses to resolve some ongoing issues. Post-surgery, I had to wear something that resembled a plug to prevent the blood coming out of my nose streaming down my face. It looked like some sort of medieval torture device. It was impossible to miss. I also sounded weird when I spoke due to the buildup of blood and mucus while my body healed. By chance, one of my co-workers was a germaphobe, Luke. Upon arrival, Luke would wipe down with Sani wipes all of his equipment. During his shift, he would avoid shaking hands or anything involving touching other people. He made it a point for his food preparations to avoid our lunchroom. He thought the room was gross and unsafe. I thought it looked like any other break room in the average office. That may be one and the same thing, etc., etc. Since I was new to the call center, I hadn't explained in advance to my friends and co-workers when the surgery was scheduled, why I would leave early one day, etc. I was and am a keep-to-myself person, so aside from my manager, I didn't initially explain why I was wearing the thing or why I sounded strange. When Luke saw me the first time post-surgery, he gave me a longer appraisal than anyone else. I noticed he was giving me side-eye throughout the rest of the day. Okay, I enjoy a prank as much as the next man, let's do this. I began leaving my workstation open with "How contagious is tuberculosis" searches on my screen. I began bringing in pamphlets on TB and reading them prominently. I started coughing from time to time. Post a coughing session, I would sometimes leave a little blood on my face. I started leaving formal-looking test results in my desk. I informed a few co-workers that I could not share food, and I avoided the potluck that we had at the time. Now that I was committed to the prank, however, anyone who asked about the face plug, I would just say that I had a medical issue and not to worry about it. I was going to gradually start sitting closer and closer to Luke for a week or so, until I was coughing right next to him, or more accurately, on him. Unfortunately, my manager was not a participant in this prank, so after the second day of Operation I Have TB, He casually mentioned to Luke that no, I did not have TB. It was just surgery on my sinuses to resolve a blockage from a car accident, to help with allergies, etc. Stop freaking out, it's not even a disease, his body just needs to heal. Now get out of my office. Luke put 2 and 2 together and held a mild grudge against me for months but eventually we became good friends. He was quite friendly aside from his incredible need to sanitize anything around him. Even so, I am still disappointed I didn't get to watch him run screaming from the call center, spraying himself with Lysol. This sort of kidding around, I should add, was one common way folks in the call center blew off stress. It alternated hourly between stretches of tedium for all agents and bursts of panicked activity for all agents. Where do you think I got the idea? Beforehand, I heard Luke describe a few pranks he pulled and had pulled on him. Once he tried to convince someone that they had run over a fellow coworker in our parking lot. He spent months trying to gaslight someone he found annoying that he was a Chinese agent looking to smuggle tech out of the US into China. In the end, Luke understood. 5. I used to work for a company which sold used cars, which were purchased from private people in our branches. Think We Buy Any Car, just mainland Europe. To used car dealers only. I worked in the customer support team and we used to get calls from people about massively different things, from sales advice to transport queries to even debt collection. It wasn't the greatest job, but I love cars and our team leader was so chill. As long as the work gets done, we could watch YouTube and Netflix or do whatever. I worked there for more than 2 years before quitting as I was moving country. This was in March 2020. COVID was slowly rising in Europe and France was one of the first countries to shut their borders. Or rather, was the country that shut its border at that point. We would get panicked customers calling us, asking what would happen to the cars, and if the delivery drivers from France would even be allowed to leave or enter the country. The simple answer we were meant to give was no. The actual answer was that only cars worth more than 50,000 euros were allowed to leave the country, due to the higher value of the car. The week this call happened, our call center was on fire due to 2 people being off sick, so we were only 3 people and more people wanting to pick their cars up themselves before their borders shut. Suddenly Dave calls. Dave was a 50-plus-year-old man from Bavaria, who decided to go to France himself and pick the car up with his tow truck. Dave is currently at the French-German border, shouting at the border patrol because they don't let him in. He is also shouting at us that the border patrol is not letting him into the country. I had Dave on the phone at that point. I explained, politely, that unfortunately no one is allowed to enter France unless you are a French national or you have to urgently be there. He snaps back that his reason is urgent, as he wants to pick up his car. I ask for the chassis number to find the car. It is a 2000 Nissan Micra. Again, I tell him that it's not possible and that he unfortunately has to turn around and go home. He starts screeching that he's going to do no such thing, as he drove more than 6 hours so far and he will get his car today. The border patrol people are laughing in the background. I explain that it's not our decision and the French government has shut down the borders and we are not able to change the rules. His screaming turned inaudible and we had a rule: if the customer is being unruly, we can warn them and hang up if they don't stop yelling. I do so. He doesn't listen. I hang up the phone. I explain the situation to my teammates. They start laughing. The phone rings. It's Dave. My coworker picks up the phone. Everyone turns silent, and everyone stares at him. You can clearly hear Dave screaming that I hang up the phone and that he is going to sue us and that he demands for us to call the border patrol and let him in. After a 20-minute back and forth between Dave and my coworker, he demands our team lead. We get our team lead, he takes a call, and another 30 minutes go by in which Dave is screaming his head off and my team lead just explains that it's not our choice, and that he can't even finish a sentence and Dave is screaming again. Same procedure. My team lead explains that screaming won't help as it's the government's choice, and if he doesn't stop screaming he will have to hang up. Dave doesn't listen. He gets hung up on. Our team lead is giving us permission to just hang up on him, and we do so whenever he calls. As this was around 1 p.m. and we were working until 5, he was calling the entire day. And we just kept telling him that it's not our choice. He was yelling at us, we hung up. The next day, he didn't call back, and I left the job 2 days later as I took my flight to the UK. I wonder what happened to Dave and his 2000 Micra. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Please Hold, episode 20. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button to hang up. Alright, let's see. We are on a day of the week that is unspecified. And, oh yes, if you have a story of your own you'd like to send in, or you need to contact me for any other Hellfreezer-related business, you can send that to kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's kingofthecities@gmail.com. And you can find that in the description of the video. This video right here. Hello. Okay, now I don't have any shoutouts. I think the next one is, I want to say 7th of August, but I'm not sure. I will check when we get a little closer to that date. But for now, let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question of the day comes courtesy of one of my moderators, Ashley. And they recommend, what is something that when growing up that was, in your opinion, a sign of wealth? Ashley says that they thought having a water dispenser in the fridge door or a pool in the backyard meant that someone was rich. I remember when I was a kid, when I was really young, I always thought that cars that had electric windows were the sign of opulence. I was, of course, until I was a little older, and pretty much all cars had them. Yes, I'm old. I remember when cars actually had the little turning handle to get them to go down. I also remember when sometimes it would stick. Anyway, what are some of yours that you think are a sign of opulence? From back in the days when you were young. For some of us, that will be a long time ago. For others, perhaps not quite so much. Let me know what you think in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.